Super, da smo spet skupaj, pa čeprav virtualno. Spet je čas za naše in vaše GOROVENTURAH, planinski festival, ki ga pripravljamo že 3. leto zapored. Čeprav virtualno, pa bo letos še posebej pestro. Z vami bova Eva in Matjaž, skupaj se bomo čez nekaj minut srečali s prvim gostom. No, Eva, koga imava danes na obisku?
Res smo navdušeni, da se nam je letos pridružil Steve House. Kljub temu, da vsi, ki ste danes z nami, najbrž o njem že veliko veste, pa mi dovolite, da vam ga samo na kratko predstavim. Steve je nedvomno eden od najboljših svetovnih alpinistov, ki pa se je svetom vertikale prvič srečal prav v slovenskih stenah pod okriljem štajerskih alpinistov. Steve je leta 1988 prišel v Maribor na študentsko izmenjavo, kjer pa so mu domotožje pomagali pozdraviti člani alpinističnega odseka Kozjak. Stevu, oziroma Štefu, kot ga kličejo v Mariboru, so prav slovenske gore razkrile skriti talent in svet prepadnih sten, ki se mu enostavno ni mogel več upreti. V slovenske gore, v dobrih 2 desetletjih je postal eden najboljših svetovnih alpinistov, ki pa je vse skozi tesno povezan tudi s slovenskim alpinizmom. Na svojo prvo himalajsko odpravo se je tako že leta 1990 podal prav z našimi alpinisti in kot 19-letni mladenič prvič zagledal svojo goro, 8000-čak Nanga Parbat. Steve in njegov soplezalec Vince Anderson sta v popolni tišini, brez medijev, kamer, brez spletnih forumov in celo brez radijske povezave vstopila v enormni himalajski zid. Stene sta se lotila skromno in le najnujnejšo zalogo opreme in hrane, katera masa ni presegla 15 kilogramov, ter v pičlih 6 dneh preplezala eno najdrznejših smeri sodobnega alpinizma, ki jo je stroka počastila tudi s prestižno alpinistično nagrado Zlati cepin.
Preden začnemo, bi vas res prosil, da pred predavanjem ugasnete zvok in kamere. Hvala. Po končanem predavanju bomo imeli čas za nekaj vprašanj. Tekom predavanja jih lahko zapišete v sporočila, to je ikona spodaj na Zoomu na sredini. Vaše vprašanja bova Steve zastavila midva, poskusili bomo najti čim več odgovorov. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. You hear me?
Yes, we can hear each other.
Hi, Steve. We were just talking about your perfect knowledge of Slovenian language, and we decided that you will have the whole presentation in Slovene. So what do you think about that? Do you agree?
Za mene to ni problema. Lahko.
Great.
No, of course, it's just a joke. We all understand English, so the presentation today will be in Slovenia, in English language. But if you want to, of course, you can also talk in Slovene.
Yeah, I do see some people with non-Slovenian names under the guest list, so I will maybe mix it up a little bit for fun, but we're just here to have fun tonight, nothing serious.
Great idea.
That's great. So Steve, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen here and get us going. First off, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to the Slovenian Alpine Museum for hosting me in their festival. It's kind of fun for me I can't be in Slovenia right now for obvious reasons perhaps, but I enjoy being able to join you tonight. So first off, I think the most serious thing is we have to have everyone, if you have access to one of these, you should get one, please, and open it up and relax, and we're going to tell a story. So, first thing first, na zdravje. For those of you that don't know, this is the Laško pivo. This is the beer of Maribor, where I was a student in 1988, 1989. So I was a child, so I went from milk straight to Laško. So, so tonight I'm going to talk mostly about Nanga Parbat. I want to give a little bit of background about myself, but most of all, I want to just keep this fun, informal, not stressful for anyone. You know, we'll do questions at the end. That was explained in the Slovenian part of the introduction. But if you didn't understand that, then that's how it's going to work. Please put questions in the chat, and then we will select a few of the best questions to answer at the end. And you can put the questions in the chat anytime. I won't actually see them. I don't have the chat open. So yeah, so here we go. Primarily, I'm going to talk about climbing the Rupal face of Nanga Parbat in 2005, but of course, I have to start the story a little bit earlier. And some of this background was given in the Slovenian language introduction. So excuse me if some of this is repetitive for some of you. Also, I want to say I'm going to probably do my best to speak very clear English, maybe a simpler English than I would normally use if I was doing this presentation in the United States. So because I know we have a very international audience tonight, so I will try to be as clear and speak slowly and clearly as possible. Okay. So just a little bit of background about me. I was, I would say, a pretty typical American kid. I grew up in a area of the states called Oregon, specifically northeastern Oregon. There are some mountains around there, but nothing really big or dramatic like the Alps. No glaciated peaks, but we have a little bit of climbing. I had, before I arrived in Slovenia in 1988, I had done some rock climbing. We actually had a climbing club in my high school, and my parents had both done some climbing. So I had probably done, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 days of rock climbing and knew the basics and had done a little bit of leading. This is one of my very first leads. And this was in 1986, about a year and a half before I went to Slovenia. And of course, at this time in the United States, we weren't bolting routes yet. There was no sport climbing, as we would call it now. It was everything done with chalks, as you can see. We didn't have friends. They existed in 1986, but we just didn't have enough money for them. So I had a little bit of climbing experience, and this was the background of American climbing at that time. It was I would say much more traditional than climbing in Europe. We never had a fixed protection of any kind, whether it was a piton or a bolt. In the 80s, this is hard to believe now, but in the 80s, this was really looked down on. It was bad style to have any kind of fixed gear or a bolt or anything. You only could use that in life or death situations. So everything was clean climbing back then, which meant, you put protection in the cracks and you took it out when you were finished. So this was my, I think it's important to understand how I started to think about climbing. When I was a senior in high school, we had a student. We had a number of exchange students in my high school in the States. We had one from Denmark, one from India, one from Sri Lanka. Trying to think, we had a German guy. We had, I don't know, probably at least 6 or 8 different exchange students in my high school. And they were all really fun people, and I always enjoyed getting to know them. So I thought that it would be interesting to take a year between high school and university and do a similar exchange. So this also put me in a unique position compared to most exchange students. I graduated from high school, so I didn't really have to go to school. I was also already accepted into the university where I started in the following year. So my academic thing was all kind of organized and taken care of. Those of you from Slovenia will, of course, recognize this picture, and all of you will know where this is, and probably all of you will have sat in that carabiner. This is a memorial at the base of the north face of the Triglav, which is, of course, the highest mountain in Slovenia. and still one of my favorite mountains and mountain faces. I climbed the njem, the long German route, just a year ago. I think that was my 5th time climbing that route. And I climbed the kratko with one of my original climbing partners from the climbing club Koziak in Maribor, Lubo Hansel. And Lubo's son, Jan, we climbed the kratko maybe 2 summers ago. And to put that in perspective, Jan is a doctor, an emergency room physician, and he was born in 1989 while I was there in Slovenia, or maybe it was 1990 he was born. I saw him the next year. I can't remember, but he was not born when I was already climbing this. So it was fun to go and do that with him and his dad. So I did climb the Triglav, my first winter, my first year there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I would love to do another presentation sometime about my experience in Slovenia. It was absolutely wonderful and very, very influential time for me in many, many ways, not just as a climber. Of course, as a climber, it completely changed my life, but also just as a person. It had a big effect on me and my development. And of course, the saying is that you are not a true Slovenian until you've been to the top of Triglav. So for those of you that are not Slovenian, I think you need to understand that, because that helps you understand the position that the mountains hold in the mentality of Slovenian culture. Like for North Americans, I think it's quite unusual to think of mountains as being as integrated into the culture as they are in the Alpine countries, including Slovenia, Austria, Switzerland, Northern Italy. These countries that are existing on the Alps, on the chain of the Alps. It's very much part of the culture. I did a wide variety of climbing. Here's me and my friend Branko on the summit of the Grossglockner, the highest mountain in Austria. This was one of my first mountain I climbed that had a glacier on it. This was December 1988. So lots of great experiences. We also did quite a bit of rock climbing. This is in the Grazer Bergland, just across the border from Maribor in Austria. We climbed there quite a few times, maybe a dozen times. And this would be the typical way those routes looked. I mean, we were climbing easier routes, so there's lots of grass. And there's also these sort of fixed pitons and fixed anchors for most of the route. These are some of the characters that some of you possibly could recognize some of these guys. This is the place I would spend a lot of time hanging out when I was in Slovenia. These guys were all from, there's two climbing clubs in Maribor, actually. There's Koziak and there's also Tam. And these guys were all from those 2 clubs. And this was the old castle wall that you can see behind them. That's on the river, the Drava River. And it's kind of a little park here, and we would boulder here and do these big endurance traverses. And you can look at the shoes and you'll see kind of state of the art was actually these La Sportiva Megas at the time. You know, Boris here is still wearing Fires, and you can actually see the hole in the toe of his shoe right there. I think, and this is Marko Lukic. Marko's the same age as I am. He's a very, very accomplished climber and really nice guy. Still part of the Koziak, because I think he had the nicest shoes. These were the Kendos, because at that time he was competing in sport climbing in the very, very early days of competition climbing. So this picture is probably like sometime around April or May 1989, I would think. So also got to explore, you know, at this time, I think it's worth mentioning that I was in Slovenia, of course, but Slovenia was part of Yugoslavia at that time. And so we climbed in Croatia specifically quite a bit, particularly when the weather was bad in the mountains. You would end up either going down to Olsp and Černikal, some of these famous Slovenian crags, Mišapeć, that are down by the Slovenian coast, and then even down further into the Istrian Peninsula, down into Croatia. And then where this picture was taken is in Paklenica National Park in Croatia. A fabulous place to climb. But I think that you could also see, if you remember that first picture of me with the helmet on and the Adidas sweatpants, and then, you know, by this time I'm climbing in a tank top, no helmet, and lycra tights. So that was kind of the standard uniform for climbers back then, rock climbing at least. I also did quite a bit of alpine climbing. Specifically, we climbed quite a bit in the Kamnik Alps, the Kamniška Alpe, particularly in Logarska Dolina, Logar Valley, because this is the closest mountains from Maribor. It's very, very close from Maribor to go into the Logar Valley, which is, if you know, everyone who is not Slovene, if you ever visit Slovenia, it's a little bit out of the way, I would say, for most tourism itineraries, but the Logar Valley is really spectacular. It's really worth visiting, even if you're not mountaineering, if you're just hiking. It's a hard place to climb because you can tell from looking at this picture, the rock is less than perfect a lot of times, although there's also some very, very good rock in there. But it's a great little venue. That's a pretty compact little mountain range, but it offers a lot of options. This is my friend Dusan, and we were doing a winter ascent of a route on the Štajerska Rinka. And this was probably, I don't remember, January. It was that winter, 88, 89. So we're going to get to Nanga Parbat now. So at the end of my year, one of the members of Koziak, Tony Golnar, I believe Tony was a member of Koziak, could be wrong. He came to one of the meetings, and he offered us, he was basically saying, look, we're going to organize this expedition to Nanga Parbat through the Slovenian Alpine Club. And if any of you want to join, you can sort of apply. And I had gone through, I had become a official Slovenian alpinist. I still have my diploma. So I was invited because I was registered, or I'm not sure what the right term is. I was not certified, but I was a Slovenian alpinist at the Slovenian Alpine Club. So I was eligible to go on this expedition. I was 19 years old. So the minimum required age was 21. And I lied to Tony and told him I was 21, but I wasn't. But I have to say, this was a great experience. I really think that this was a super valuable thing for me. Here's all of us that were on the expedition, and perhaps some of you watching see yourselves in this picture. This was a really great group. We were, I think, either 18 or 19. This is Tony here. And that's me over here on the far left. And this was a different time in terms of climbing. We climbed this mountain. We were climbing the shell route on Nanga Parbat in expedition style, we're sort of a modified expedition style. We had 3 camps, and then one pair went to the summit, specifically Maria Fantar, who is sitting here, and Jose Rosman, who's kneeling here. So this was a great experience for me because I had so much to learn, and I did learn so much. So this is our first camp, and then the route goes out through here, across this gully, and then up on this rib, and you climb up this rib to where it's safe from the serac, and you can get up, and there's a ridge up here and a camp. This route it's not easy. This section is hard climbing, some technical climbing. The rock is really, really poor. And I didn't, but the other group, the rest of the group fixed ropes through here. And then I helped carry loads and did what I could to support. Here I am in load carrying mode somewhere near the top of that couloir. And this is kind of how it went. It was pretty warm a lot of times there. That's one thing people don't understand about Pakistan. It's a lot warmer often than Nepal. And then after about a month, Maria and Yoje summited Nanga Parbat. It was they did a great job doing this ascent. They went from the last camp we had established at about 7,000 meters, and then spent 2 nights in a small bivy tent going up to the summit and coming back to that camp and then coming down. We didn't have much communications. We had these big, huge radios, and I think that I can't remember, but I don't think they took the radio to the summit. They just left the radio in the camp or something. A lot of these memories are, this was 1990, so 31 years ago. I don't remember exactly, but this was a really great ascent. It was also, looking back now, it brings a lot of sadness to me because I really got to know Maria and Yoje well. I worked a lot with them. I sort of became the like kind of liaison officer for the expedition because I spoke English and Slovene. So, and everything done in Pakistan is done in English because it was formerly part of the British Empire. So everyone speaks English there. But then I believe in 1992, Maria and Yoje did not come back from a summit attempt on Kanchenjunga. And as far as I know, they're still up there on Kanchenjunga. I was really sad. I miss those guys. After that expedition, I came back. So on that expedition, I should say, I reached the second camp, camp 2 with some loads. I actually went a little higher. Maybe I can't remember. I did go higher. I can't remember if I got to camp 3 or not, honestly. It's written down somewhere. So I got a little bit of experience, but it was a really hard trip for me. Like I was humbled. I was not a natural by any means. I was like one of the, I would say, weakest people on the expedition. I was had a really hard time with the altitude. It was hard. It was really hard. I got my butt kicked, as we would say. That was good. That was really good for me. I had no aspirations to be any kind of professional alpinist. You also have to understand that. I was purely an amateur. I was 20 years old. I was in university. And of course I was interested in climbing these peaks and climbing, but I never thought, the professional mountaineers didn't even exist at this time. Also in the 1990, there were no professional climbers. It just wasn't, nobody did that. So this picture is of Mount McKinley, and I'm going to just show a couple of pictures because there's sort of a gap here between 1990 when I was in Nanga Parbat and then 2004 when I went back to Nanga Parbat 14 years later. So I spent a lot of time climbing around on Mount McKinley. I climbed a bunch of new routes there, and I guided a bunch there, and it was quite a formative place for me. I climbed new routes on both of these big walls. These are each about 2,000 meters high. And here's the west buttress, the normal route that comes up along here, like so. And I also, of course, climbed the Slovak direct route with Mark Twight and Scott Backes that went up through there. And this was a place that I was really able to, I spent about 10 years climbing really, really intensely here. Every season every year I would spend the whole season, 2 months. And that was divided between guiding and climbing. And I would use the guiding to get my ticket paid and to get up there. And then once I was up there, I would, get on a flight with one of the air services when they had an extra seat, and just, I would use all the leftover food from the guided trips and all that stuff. And so I could stay up there and climb for very, very cheap. sort of the alpinist version of being a dirtbag and climber in Talkeetna, Alaska. Another place where I climbed a lot was in the Canadian Rockies, and this is another place that for me was very formative. It's an incredible mountain range, very, very difficult place to climb. This is, I think, actually one of the only places that I think is more difficult to climb than the Julian Alps, because it is very far north, so the way the snow and the ice metamorphizes is very different than how it happens here in the Alps. So very challenging place to climb. I spent a lot of time climbing there. That was the east face of Howes Peak where I climbed a new route, and here is the north face of North Twin, where I climbed. Where did we go? Somewhere like this, up this, and this was with Marko Prešel, my good Slovenian friend and climbing partner. I climbed a lot with Marko. He took this picture. That's me. This was 2004. But just sharing some of these other things that went into my background of climbing before I came back to Nanga Parbat. This is another Marko Prešel photo, beautiful image of when we were descending on the south face of Nupse after an alpine style attempt of the south face, descending what's known as the British Nepali route, which we were descending to get back from our attempt. This is, I did start to climb in the Himalaya. So for about 10 years, I didn't go to the Himalaya. I went to Nanga Parbat in 1990. I didn't go to the Himalaya at all for about 10 years, went to Canada and Alaska a lot. And then in 2001, I started to go to the Himalaya and try some things there. I was at this point much more serious about my climbing. I was living as a professional mountain guide and climbing as much as I could and going on as many expeditions as I could and using, all of the available things I could from grants from Slovenian Mountaineering Association. I think helped support Marko on this trip. We got a Polar Tech Challenge grant to do this climb, and we would always do them in this really lightweight style and really, really small budgets. The budgets for these were always less than $10,000 for everyone, for plane tickets, permits, and by not climbing 8,000 meter peaks, that's actually usually pretty easy because the 7,000 meter peaks and 6,000 meter peaks are just much, much cheaper. So, this kind of all developed out of this, I'm mentioning this because it's all part of my sort of ethos and approach to the mountains, but also to life, where you're trying to have a very rich experience on these expeditions. And I think by elevating the experience and making that the most important thing, more important than the summit, actually, or more important than, is the experience of trying to climb something with your close friends. That's what we were doing. So we would really consciously try to make it as simple as possible and have, just 2 to 4 people. We would have a simple base camp. We would have usually a cook. You kind of have to have a cook in Nepal or Pakistan or any of these places. And then we would just acclimatize on the mountain and try to climb, but very sort of simple stripped down style. Another place I tried to climb with Marko, and this is also his image, was Masherbrum. Matits, Jost and I, and Marko and I attempted this pillar. We wanted to climb up through here via this pillar. This was in 2003. There is a Austrian-Japanese route that comes up behind here. There's a couloir behind this, and it goes up here. It has never been repeated, actually. I also climbed quite a bit in the Characusa Valley. This is a mountain called Haji Brak. It was just under 5,995 meters. And I was able to make the first ascent of this mountain in 2003. And then I climbed, this is K7. This is the K7 Massif, K7 Main, and K7 West. And this summit is still untouched. And in 2003, I was able to make, 2004, I was able to make the second descent of this mountain via a new route that went, up here, up this gully, and then up here, and then out onto this nose, up this glacier, and then here joining the Japanese route, which was the first descent route that climbed kind of this buttress. And then joined their route up to the top here. So this was a really important climb for me. Actually, it took me 2 summer seasons in both 2003 and 2004, and I made 7 pretty intense attempts. And was successful on the last one and got within 200 meters on 2 of those attempts, and would always come all the way back down climbing. And again, all these attempts were just by myself. But this was, I think, a very important period for me because it ties to Nanga Parbat, because after this experience of spending these summers on this, trying to climb K7, and I shared base camp with friends, but I was climbing by myself, and that gave me a lot of, that really gave me a lot of mental fortitude, a lot of mental strength. Doing this was mentally much more difficult than climbing Nanga Parbat with Vince was, because I was alone, and you don't have a partner to share decisions with or any of that. So that was an important climb for me. I reached the summit just right as the sun was going down, and this was a climb that was done in, like I said, 2004. So the plan in 2004 was actually to go to the Characusa Valley, climb K7 hopefully, and then partner with a couple of other guys and go to Nanga Parbat. The idea being that we could acclimatize on K7, which is not super high, but it's it's just under 7,000 meters. It's 6,942 meters. And then we would go out to Skardu, rest for a few days, and then go to Nanga Parbat. I can talk at length about these kinds of strategies. Actually, I don't think knowing what I know now, I don't think this kind of strategy is a very good idea, because you lose so much fitness. You might gain an acclimatization, but your body, you just lose so much fitness in that 4 to 6 weeks of climbing K7 and pushing really hard. So that I didn't have, when we arrived over here, Nanga Parbat, it was only like 10 days after I'd been on the summit of K7, or maybe less, I don't remember, could look it up, but we didn't have much fitness. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the attempt to climb Nanga Parbat in 2004, because it was absolutely crucial for the success of 2005. So I was there with Bruce Miller, and there'll be a picture of Bruce here in a second. And again, this very lightweight style. There was Bruce and I attempting the RuPaul phase, and then Doug Chabot and Steve Swenson were attempting the Mazzano Ridge at the same time. So we all shared a permit and shared a base camp. This is actually the same base camp that I used in 1990 with this expedition I was on, the Slovenian expedition from 1990. Same exact spot for base camp. Amazing base camp. It's really low though. It's I don't remember what the altitude is, but it's maybe like, I guess, 3,300, 3,400 meters, which is nice. You have green grass, but it makes it hard to stay acclimated for the altitude. So our strategy was to be light and to climb solo as much as we could and only use the ropes when we really, really had to. We got our backpacks down to 12 kilos, and this was expected to be 7 days of food and fuel, tent, sleeping bag, the whole kit. There's Bruce and I. This is the day we started. We actually started after lunch on the first day, very civilized, and just went up about 1,000 meters to get to the base of the face and made a bivouac near the base of the face. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this climb, but it's important to talk about it a little bit because it taught me a lot about the face. We got quite high, and is basically like a very good exploration of the face. I understood where it was. And then when in 2005, Vince and I climbed exactly the same route for the first 2 days. And then we changed to a better route than what Bruce and I had chosen in 2004. So there's Bruce, and this was how we would climb a lot. And you'll see this in the 2005 as well. We climbed a lot at night, especially in the first half of the climb, because there's so much rockfall and objective hazard and icefall that you want the face to be really frozen. So you have to climb when it's dark and then kind of sleep during the day. And then once you get up above, say, 6,000 meters, then you can start to climb more during the day. And we would, like I said, we're climbing without the rope as much as possible. And we probably pushed that a little too hard, specifically climbing stuff like this. I mean, we had, backpacks. I mean, they were okay. They were only 12 kilos, but still they're 12 kilos, and that ice is pretty steep. And we're, by now at probably close to 5,000 meters and doing this kind of technical climbing with no belay, no margin for error. So this allowed us really great speed, but it was at the cost of very high risk to both of us. So you have to understand that if Bruce falls off there and goes down 2,000 meters to the bottom of the face and dies, I don't have any way to survive. Like, he has half of the equipment, half of the tent, half the sleeping bag, half the food, half the rack, half the rope. Like, I'm gonna try to survive, but it's very unlikely that either one of us would survive if the other one made a mistake and died. So very, very high consequence approach. Once when we got to actual, what I would call rock climbing, mixed climbing, we would get out the rope. We climbed on one single 8mm rope. And we did, one of the things we did that actually Vince and I did the next time is we didn't bring helmets. You can see I'm not wearing a helmet. That was a really stupid choice because there was a lot, like I said, there's a lot of rock and ice fall. And we thought it was just, we decided not to do that based on weight. But in 2005, Vince and I wore a helmet. So there's our helmets. This is actually in a different day, different acclimatization. I don't know why this picture is here, but there's Bruce and I. This was when we were preparing for the climb. So here we are. This is pretty close to our high point. And I'll show a picture of this rock tower later on, because this is a big landmark on the route. It's a huge rock tower that sits at about 7,000 meters, and you can see it basically all the time you're climbing the face. And so it's kind of one of the main ways we would stay oriented to where we are. So Bruce and I climbed in here, actually made a bivvy here, and then went out over here and around for our final attempt. This was our highest bivvy. When Vince and I climbed, we did not reclimb this ground. We were way to the right of this picture. So this is Bruce and I the next morning, getting ready to go to the summit. And for those of you that have been on high altitude or know about high altitude medicine, you'll know that we are not looking too good. We have a lot of swelling in our faces, and the altitude is starting to catch up with us. We were not well enough acclimatized. We basically arrived at Nanga Parbat base camp, had 1 day there, and started climbing. So we had both been on top of K7. Bruce 1 or 2 days later than me, but still that's only 6,900 meters. And now here we are 2 weeks later, roughly, sleeping at 7,000 meters, and it was not enough acclimatization. This is another thing that I learned from this expedition. So we climbed up a little higher and went to I guess we did have, I'm gonna have to take that back about the helmets. I don't know what was going on with my helmet, but this is the highest picture from the climb. I was just hitting the wall with the altitude. I just couldn't push through it. I was getting altitude sick. I was getting dizzy. We are in this picture, I don't know exactly, of course, we'll never know exactly, but somewhere between 7,200 and 7,500 meters. And Bruce decided we needed to turn around because he was worried I was going to die. So we went down and we spent a couple of days going down. This descent was really, really hard. We did not know where we were. The weather got worse. And this is its own story. This was 2.5 days that were fairly epic. We barely got off of this face, I would say, because we didn't know where we were, and we knew we needed to get over to where the 1970 route from the Herlingkoffer expedition that Reinhold Messner climbed in 1970. We knew we needed to get over to their route, but we just didn't really know where it was, and it was foggy, and we were doing a lot of rappels, and it was pretty sketchy. We would down climb wherever we could, just because we didn't have very much equipment. And when we got back down, got to the base of the face, this is what we walked off with. We had started with 2 ropes, and we came back with, you know, a section of 1 rope and 2 nuts, a friend, and a ice screw. That's all and some 2 pitons. That's all we had left. So that was a very emotionally draining thing. And hats off to Bruce. He really stepped up and did an incredible job getting us off of there. And he led most of the descent and really did a fantastic job seeing us through that descent. So now getting to finally Nanga Parbat 2005. I guess this is this picture shows the route pretty well. This is the route ball face. This is sort of famous because it's the biggest mountain wall in the world. If you measure from the river down here to the summit, I don't know, it's well over 5,000 meters of vertical gain. And if you go out to the bigger river that's on the other side, the Indus River, you know, it's probably over 6,000 meters of vertical relief. You know, we would measure from the Bergtrand, as we call it in English, the highest crevasse, the Rime in French, the I don't know what it's called in Slovene actually, which is about here. And if you measure from this highest crevasse to the top, it's about 4,100 vertical meters. And if you measure from here, where the glacier is flat, it's about 4,500 vertical meters of wall. So big place. This shows pretty well our route. You'll see we had a little cache down here where we started. Our base camp was down over here. So you have to walk up here and then come down into this valley. And then we had somewhere in here, we had to stash some gear, and then we started climbing. Our bivouacs were approximately, first one was approximately here, second one was approximately here, third one was approximately here, fourth was approximately here, and fifth was approximately here. When we went to the summit, came back, and then we from here could go kind of that direction to the south and get down to the Messner route, which more or less follows this faint rib that sticks out here and comes down on this side. So that's where we're going. This is some of the team. There's Vince on the right side. This is Vida, our cook. Vida was with us on lots of expeditions. He's a great guy. Still in touch with him. I just had a video call with him at the New Year's. This is me. This is our liaison officer. He was a great liaison officer, one of the best liaison officers I'd ever worked with. Really, really helpful guy. This is our assistant cook. He helped Fida. This is Colin Haley. Colin was very young at this time. I don't know what he was, probably about the same age I was when I went to Nanga Parbat, like 20-ish. And he and Scott Johnston were trying to climb the Mazzano Ridge, and we were all 4 sharing the permit. There's a picture of Scott on that expedition. I don't have, he must have taken the other picture. So again, the budget for this trip was actually $8,000 for all 4 of us. The permit for climbing Nanga Parbat was, I think, $850, because this was a time when the permits were cheaper in 2005 and then maybe now, I don't really know. We again elected to acclimatize on the Mazzano Ridge. So we didn't do a multi-expedition approach this time. We just went straight to the Rupal face. We came here, we went on the Mazzano route and acclimatized and spent like quite a few weeks up there. This is the Camp 1, same place I was in 1990 on the Slovenian expedition. This is Scott here having some tea in the morning. We would sleep up there, and we would, only difference is we didn't fix ropes. We would climb sort of alpine style between the camps. This is climbing up that Chaucy Bad Rock up between Camp 1 and Camp 2. This is the top of that little steep part, which is not trivial. It's a very serious little bit of climbing there. And then that's where you kind of, I think you actually come out on the top there, and then you walk along this ridge, and then I'm approaching the place where we had a camp, where everybody has the Camp 2, and we would sleep there a bunch, and then we could climb up higher. And Vince and I got up to over 7,000 meters a couple of times, right around 7,000 meters. My philosophy with that is to get within about 1,000 meters of the summit, and then you probably have about a 2-week window which you're ready to go to the summit. So I wanted to get to like 7,100 meters at least once, if not twice. So this is looking back down to the Rupal Valley. The face of the Rupal face is a southeast face. So this kind of just shows, this is the Mazzano Ridge that we're on, and this is that how you go back down into the to base camp down here. It's fairly serious little undertaking. So we're gonna go ahead and start the actual climb. I don't have tons of photos of climbing the Rupal face actually. So I think I had 3 rolls of film. This was 2005. So we were shooting film cameras. I was shooting, those of you, I always get asked this, so I'm just gonna say I was shooting Provia 100, Fujifilm Provia 100, which was a slide film, and Vince was shooting a black and white infrared film. So the black and white pictures are his, the color pictures are mine. Here we are at this little cache. We'd left some things in these plastic bags near the glacier so that when we started, it was going to be good. We started on September 1st. I've always had really good luck with late season in the Karakoram because the monsoon that's usually more in India and Nepal has subsided, gotten weaker, and there's long periods of good weather. We did this climb in perfect weather. We had around a 14-day high pressure system that we climbed this route in the middle of that 14 days of high pressure, perfect weather. So here we are on packed up and ready to go, looking very excited and fresh faced. You can kind of see where we're going back here. We're going up here onto this spur and then up here. Bruce and I had gone into this sort of valley, and Vince and I stayed here on the front of the pillar because Bruce and I went in, climbed up into here, but it was hard to get back to the front of the pillar. So Vince and I took a different route that I think is much better. I have to have some of my beer, excuse me. So you start, like I said, you're under 4,000 meters and there's grass and there's like, even in places there's goats and cows up here. I mean, it's you're not at high altitude yet. It's very, very warm as well. So you can see this is that tower actually that I talked about. So you can see it. It's not these other ones. These are something else, but that tower is visible. So we started here and just basically climbed this really steep glacier. And the main risk here was, besides icefall, was the crevasses. There was a lot of crevasses in here. So we did that in the morning, and then we hung out here all afternoon. We did not have much food and fuel. We had 1 canister per day. I think we had fuel canisters, and then we had food for 6 days, and we expected that between that amount of food and fuel, we could get by for 7 days. I also, by this time, was pretty good at packing the food, so I knew that one of the biggest mistakes people make on high altitude expeditions is they think that they're going to eat at high altitude what they eat down low, which never happens. So then you carry up all this food that you can't eat anyway. So we got our food down pretty light because I knew that all we would be able to eat at 7,000 meters was some nuts and some tea. And I mean, that's just reality. You wish you could eat more, but you just can't. So very comfortable spot. Oh, I wanted to talk about this, our kit a little bit. We used this old tent called, then it was new, Black Diamond First Light tent, which was a very light tent. It weighed about 1 kilo. And then this is a sleeping bag that I made myself. I had help from my friends and coworkers at Patagonia, and they gave me all the materials. And the thing about the sleeping bag, it was just a insulation on top. There was no insulation on the bottom, and it was one big bag for 2 people. So the idea is that our shared warmth would help us. So this was a really important innovation, I think, that helped us because the sleeping bag only weighed 1 kilo. So our bivouac kit was really light because the tent was 1 kilo, the sleeping bag was 1 kilo, and then we just had those really high insulation foam pads. So really, really light kits. You can see the yellow foam pad on the back of Vince's pack there. So these first couple of days, we climbed again at night because of the rock fall, and we were exposed here. So, and then we would belay wherever there was technical climbing. We were more conservative, I would say, Vince and I, than Bruce and I were, because I told Vince that I thought Bruce and I pushed it too much with the soloing, so we used the rope more. This is me. had the blue and black backpack, and Vince mostly had a black backpack. Incredible weather throughout. Every morning was just gorgeous. This is actually K2 right here, and this is Masherbrum, and then this is the Gasherbrum group. Over here, this is probably Gasherbrum 1 and Gasherbrum 2, 3, and maybe 4 right here. So the Karakoram range is this, and that's just a little bit north of the Himalayan range. Nanga Parbat is technically part of the Himalayan range, not part of the Karakoram range. So this is Vince climbing. Vince started this pitch, which was the crux, most difficult ice and mixed climbing of the route. And he actually had my backpack on, but it was too hard for him. So he came back down, and then I climbed it without the backpack, and then pulled my backpack up on one of the ropes and climbed up through here. This ice was not very good, mostly because this is pretty low elevation, and so a lot of this ice was melting away every day and then reforming at night. So this is a little different view of that pitch. This is I think Vince, but a little bit lower below the crux, but it went up in here. But the idea was to get out of here before the sun came up. So we actually got up that, and then we had several pitches of this kind of easy ice runnel. And now rocks were starting to fall, and we were trying to get to where we knew there would be a safe bivouac, but we really couldn't go fast enough. There was a lot of rock fall here, and it was pretty scary. It was it was only probably 7 o'clock in the morning, but the sun is hitting the face and warming things up. So this is the last section we belayed, and then we unroped and climbed solo up a little higher to get to move faster to get to the bivvy. The bivvy is a really, really nice spot, actually. Bivouacs on a face like this are really, really important part of the strategy. And sometimes it's worth having a shorter day to have a really good night's sleep. So that didn't require much work. So you can see Vince chopping a little bit the ledge there, but this was a very easy ledge to make. And then we were both able to sleep flat very comfortably. We had basically all day to rest. And then we started around, I don't remember, but probably 1 or 2 in the morning, or maybe actually, I think we started at midnight the next day. So there's that bivouac, and all day we would watch these huge avalanches come down this couloir because it was warming up, and then also there's some seracs up here. So we knew that what we do is climb up here and then get across this as fast as possible, because this is very dangerous. There's big seracs, avalanches here. Then we go around this and go up, and this keeps us on the pillar. Our route really follows a pillar, but we're not like, it's kind of, you have to go get on these steps to get onto the pillar. And this is sort of the first step. This is sort of the second step. And then once you're here, you're on the front of the pillar, and you stay on the pillar pretty much the whole rest of the way. Here's one of those avalanches I took a picture of coming down. You know, it was sobering knowing that we had to cross this in the morning. That was a little bit frightening, but also we noticed that as soon as the sun went down, the face quieted down a lot, and we didn't hear any avalanches during the night. So here we are getting going and starting to climb up. This was our bivouac right there. So we're a little bit higher now. And climbing unroped mostly just because we want to be as fast as possible. When we waited for each other, we went across this one at a time. This is a place from which if somebody had been killed, the other person could probably climb back down and survive. So we went across that dangerous couloir, and once we got here, we were trying to, you know, and you're trying to go as fast as you can. So like when Vince came up to me here, I mean, he's like breathing hard, and I mean, you're basically sprinting as much as you can sprint with a pack on and climbing it. You know, now you're at, I don't know what this elevation was, I don't remember, but 5,000, over 4,000 meters, maybe close to 5,000 meters by now. And then we started climbing up on that ice slope onto the pillar. And this was some of the best climbing actually of the route was on this day. This was a huge day. We climbed, I think, 23 hours on this day alone, and most of it unroped. We got to this section of the pillar where we're on the front of the pillar. You'll remember that picture where I talked about Bruce soloing before? That was somewhere on this front of this serac. So Bruce and I went up over here, and this was dangerous. And we didn't really know how dangerous it was. So when Bruce and I were there, so then that's why Vince and I took this other route, much safer, much better climb. This was great climbing. If this section of this climb was in the Alps, it would be a classic. It was fun climbing, mixed climbing with ice climbing, good rock. So I think this is Vince leading. I can't remember who led which pitch. It actually kind of looks like me. I can't remember. So climbed up through this big section, and then up onto this other part of this big ice. This is a big ice face that you can see here. It's hard to, everything is very foreshortened. I mean, up to where my cursor is here, I mean, that's hundreds and hundreds of meters. So we climbed up that rock mixed section up onto this ice face. And this was a hard day just because it was so many. I think we soloed, and then a bunch, and then we belayed around 30 pitches, 30 rope lengths. So it was a lot of climbing this day. And towards the end of it, we were getting really tired. So we were belaying things that were pretty easy just because we were so tired and so prone to making mistakes. We had to really slow down. So I don't have a picture of that bivouac. But that bivouac, let me see, the next bivouac was somewhere right in here. And so then we went up here. This is the tower. We went up here, and then to the top. So this is the morning of the fourth day. This was the section that was the most frightening part. We were over 6,000 meters now, and we had no idea how we were going to climb this wall here. We had no idea. We tried to look with a telescope. I had lots of photos, and I could never tell how this was going to go to get through here. And really, and even when I took this picture, that's why I kept climbing way off to the right, because I wanted to look up in here and see if there was going to be some ice or a couloir some way out. And Vince was more just like, no, I'm going to save my energy and go straight up. So he went straight up. I was really scared about this pitch, because if this was a total dead end and it was just these super steep rock walls, I mean, there's an icicle, you can see that's all vertical rock. It would be really hard to climb up anywhere through there. So if we didn't find a good way, I think it was going to be game over for our attempt. The long story short is that we found a way through. I don't have pictures of that section. They do exist. I just don't have them with me and can't find them. But I think there's only one picture of that section where we found some nice water ice, and we're able to climb through there. We were having a really hard time finding a bivouac, and we found this bivouac around midnight. So now this was another, this was day 4. Day 3, we climbed 23 hours. And on day 4, we climbed roughly 18 hours. I don't remember exactly. It's written down somewhere. And we were exhausted, and we knew we had to find a good spot to sleep. So I think that this was really one of the key moments and key days of the climb, is that section that was unknown. First of all, how we didn't know how we were going to get through, and then second, like where we were going to sleep. And we found this little spot, and this is midnight. We flattened it out, and we got our little tent on there, and we went to sleep. And we actually slept quite well. I mean, this sounds funny, but this was really probably one of the most important things of this climb, that we both slept like 6 hours of real sleep that night, and were able to get some recovery. This bivouac, I remember, was at 6,800 meters. So we're pretty high now, but we were acclimatized well enough, and we were comfortable enough that we were able to sleep. We had a good anchor in the rock here, so we were tied in. The weather was perfect, but as you can see, we were in an incredibly exposed place. Obviously no wind that night. So then we climbed up, and there was one more bivouac, which I don't think I have a picture of, but I'm showing this picture because this is the top of that tower that I had shown you from the pictures from 2004. This is that landmark. So we are finally above that landmark. And this was, I should also add, that was on summit day. So I don't have a picture of that last bivouac. And then I only have a couple of pictures from summit day, that one, and then this one, which isn't even sharp. And this is very, very close to the summit. This is, I don't remember, like 10 meters below the summit. It's really close to the summit. We started at first in the dark. I don't remember what time. And then we got to the summit right before the sun went down, maybe 2 hours before the sun went down. I don't remember what time it was. Oh yeah, there was this picture from that day where this was on the summit day. This is a little before that last picture, actually. They're slightly out of order, so excuse me. But this, I just asked Vince how he was doing, and he was like too worked to talk, and so he just made this, and I laughed, and then I took this picture. So if you can have a sense of humor when you're climbing at 8,000 meters, then that's a good sign. So this is when we arrived at the summit. I arrived just right in front of Vince, and we knew we were there because there's all this stuff in the rocks. There was this piece of rope, there was this flag, there was this picket, there was some other stuff laying around from climbers that had climbed from the other side, from the normal route earlier that summer. And you can see from Vince's expression, it's hard being up there. This was the end of the 6th day. We were exhausted. We obviously didn't have any kind of oxygen or any of that stuff. We were completely on our own on the summit of this 8,000 meter peak, pretty much on the moon as far as those things go. So I took this sort of selfie style picture of the two of us. And then Vince told me to go over, there was this little, I think this is snow, but it's actually a little higher than the rock. And he said, I'll go over there and lift your ice axe as high as you can. So I did that. That's as high as I could get it. I think it's worth noting here for a second how I'm dressed. This is an 8,000 meter peak, actually on the 6th of September in 2005. So not exactly the warmest part of summer. And, you know, I don't even have puff pants on. And I definitely don't have a down one-piece suit. And people are always surprised at that. But I think a lot of it is this, you know, I think that whatever style of climbing you engage in, it sort of becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy, in that if you go with a really light style, you move and you have the fitness to support it, you move more quickly and you generate more heat from your own body. If you climb with oxygen, you have to move slower, you have to carry more weight, you don't generate as much heat from yourself, so you have to have the oxygen to help keep you warm. So it's kind of this thing, you know, and you have to have the big down one-piece suit, and you have to have more. So, you know, either both of these ways of climbing kind of fulfill themselves. So if you, and I think that that's true in life too, if you kind of try a lightweight style, it sort of fulfills itself. And if you accumulate a lot and get more and do, you know, that also kind of fulfills itself. So you can see it was getting to be evening. The sun is almost gone from us. And then I took this picture of Vince with his camera. This is one of the only pictures I have with me from Vince's pictures. I need to get the rest of his. You'd be surprised by most of my, I think I only have about half of the slides from this climb even scanned, because the other half were just horrible pictures. So I didn't even bother to scan them, but I guess at some point I probably should scan all of them. I like this picture a lot. This picture is actually in front of my desk right here. There's so much emotion in this picture, and you know, it takes me back so deep. It just takes me back. It takes me to that summit. It takes me to that moment. It takes me to that place, being up there, and to that feeling of being, I mean, we were really felt like we were out there. And I guess we were, but so maybe it was appropriate, but, you know, it also felt like I should just speak for myself. I think I can speak for Vince, but I definitely on the summit felt this immense sense of accomplishment. I knew that we were not down, but this was a huge, like, kind of life dream for me to do something like that. And it wasn't like, woohoo, party, yeah, I'm gonna like have some champagne now or whatever. But I just like, it was like in my mind, I knew, I was like, we've done it. Like, we have done it. Now we have to get down, but we have done it. And that was, I really remember having that thought. I really remember like having, for lack of a better word, like a lot of love for Vince. Like I was just like, so, like, I felt so close to him. Like, you know, we were really a team. Like this day on the summit day, we didn't talk. Like, we didn't have to at this point. We were just, you know, one team, you know, and it's almost like you have a mental telepathy and you can just read each other's minds. And we're completely in it, you know, no distractions. So this is the next morning in our bivouac. So there's a whole story about coming down off of the summit. I don't really have pictures of it because it was night and it's hard to tell the story, but it was, we left the summit, I think an hour before dark. We got down to the most difficult part, right, as it was getting dark. And then we had to really slow down and we belayed each other. We only brought we had two climbing rope. We had a climbing rope and a really thin 5mm rope. And we only brought the 5mm rope, and we had to do a bunch of short rappels. And this was, I don't remember, again, it's written down somewhere, but I think this was more than a 24-hour day going to the summit and coming back. And then the next morning we slept until the sun hit the tent and it warmed up. And then I don't really remember I think my camera actually stopped working. And then I think on the way down, we only have a couple of pictures and they're only from Vince's camera. And I only have I think 2 pictures from the descent. There's that one at the last bivouac, and then this one when we actually got down off the face. So this is the place where we took our harnesses off for the first time this is the 8th day of the climb, and we were just complete, like I can't even tell you how destroyed we were, how wasted we were, how tired we were, like how much it hurt, like everything hurt, like our bodies hurt, we had headaches, like our feet were killing us, our legs hurt, like everything. We just was pain. We were out of food. We didn't eat any. We had 1 package of soup the last 2 days. We had enough fuel because we found when we descended via we did about 6 rappels, if I remember right. And that got us to where the Mesna route is. And then we were able to descend that route, and we were able to find quite a bit of stuff that we could use. We found a lot of pitons. We found like 100 pitons. I think we only used 20 of them, but we found 100 of them. We found fuel canisters. And I don't remember if we used them or not. I brought one. I think I might have carried it all the way back down to base camp, and we might have never used it because we didn't need it. But you're just like, you're in total survival mode. And you're like, okay, there's a fuel canister. I'm going to take that because I might need it. So we had water, we were hydrated, but we hadn't had food. And we were, I think, exhausted doesn't really do it justice as to how we were feeling. This descent, both from the summit and then the 2 more days to come. So it basically took us 2 full days to come down. The 7th day, we rappelled and down climbed all day until about midnight, until I think Vince dropped his headlamp and my headlamp died, and we found a place we could stop, and we stopped. And then morning came and we kept going down. But we did most of the descent on that 7th day. And what this was part of the rest of the story, because we came down and we spent 1 day in base camp. We were at the end of our permit, end of our expedition. We knew we had to leave. We were exhausted anyway. And on this camp, you're really close. It's only 5 hours from this base camp up, or actually from the town up to the base camp. And if you go from base camp back to town, it's only like 2 to 3 hours walk on these big trails, and there's tons of people, and they're farming there, and there's animals and all kinds of stuff. So we started walking back, and as we were walking through these little villages, there would be all the school kids got dressed up in their school uniforms, and they'd made these signs. We pray for the long lives of the USA expedition team. Remember, this is Pakistan in 2005. Like, the United States had invaded Iraq, like just right a couple of years before that. Like it was not, the Nanga Parbat massacre happened over in the other base camp just a couple of years after this. It was not a great time to be an American traveling in certain parts of Pakistan. I always felt very safe. I always felt very welcome. But this was kind of a surprise, to get this kind of welcome. It was really touching. We were really confused, to be quite honest, because we didn't know how they knew. Like when, it was like our liaison officer, our cook, our assistant cook, me, Vince, Colin, Scott, like we didn't tell anybody. We didn't have radios. We had a sat phone at that time in base camp, and we were able to call home and tell our loved ones that we were alive and coming home. But there was no news anywhere. So we were really surprised. And this just, was really, really cool. Tarshing, the school Tarshing, that's the name of the town where you can drive to. Here's the girls back here from the girls' school in the blue uniforms. And, we got this is Vince, this is our liaison officer with the jacket. And then they would give us like all of these flowers. This is Colin Haley, and they were giving him flowers. And, it was cool, but we were also like, what is going on? We didn't get it. And then we found out that the villagers had seen the lights at night. So they saw our lights come off to the summit. well, they actually saw our lights every night going up the face because it was perfect weather, remember? So at night they would see our lights, and then they saw our lights coming down off the summit. And they saw on the 7th night our lights coming really, really far down, and they assumed that we got down. And of course, they were right. You know, and then when they knew that this expedition had gone up the base camp, and they knew we had been successful, so they were very excited. The last time that, to my knowledge, this had been done was in 1970 with the Mesner expedition. So, you know, this was 35 years after that. So they understood that this was a not so ordinary event in the life of their valley. So here we are. They took us into the town square in Tarshing there, and the mayor gave us a speech, and they fed us cookies and brought us like lots of soda pop to drink and stuff, and it was fine. But like Vince actually had a flight like in 2 days, and so we were a little anxious to get going. We also really wanted to go take a shower, and so we spent a couple of hours there, and then we got in the jeeps and we headed back down, and we're back in Islamabad, and Vince made his flight pretty quickly. And my flight was a couple days later, and I was the official expedition leader, so I wrapped up the formalities and flew home. So that's my story of Nanga Parbat. I do enjoy sharing it with people, especially in an informal way, like feeling like it's friends sitting around the campfire or I don't talk about it very often. I've used this story in lots of ways, speaking to big corporations and, you know, doing those kinds of things. But the most sort of authentic kind of thing, that the story that feels best to me, is just sitting around with a bunch of fellow climbers, talking about climbing is easy. It's fun, and I appreciate all of you joining me tonight. Thanks.
Steve, thank you so much for this. It was really wonderful. It was great.
You're welcome. I was a little longer than I said it would be. I'm sorry.
It's very interesting, so it doesn't matter. I think everybody was listening to you no matter the time. We actually got quite a lot of questions. A few of them are also in the chat. So let's begin with the first one. So Yelena is actually asking you, what was the reason that you set out so quietly on this expedition?
We always climbed quietly. Like I never did expeditions where I had media or anything like that. Was like the idea of an expedition for me is always to go and be alone on the mountain with your partners. And like I said, have this simple and very rich experience. And the last thing I want on a climbing trip is somebody trying to make a movie or do an interview or have any kind of media presence. This to me is not part of my vision of alpinism.
Thank you. One more question. Did the fact that one of the most famous Slovenian alpinists, Tomaž Humar, was rescued from the same mountain a month earlier give you some second thoughts? Did you consider, I don't know, curing that fear or what?
Yeah. So we visited Tomaž in his base camp before his attempt, and then this was quite a different. His was quite a different approach to the mountains than mine. And Vince's, and we actually didn't know that we used a different base camp than him. We were on the other side of the glacier, about maybe 45 minutes or an hour away, but we didn't have any communications with his expedition. And we arrived just about the time that he started his attempt. And then we were actually doing our acclimatization during the rescue. So we went up on the mountain and we were on the Mazzeno Ridge for like 7 days. And we came back and they were like, oh, Tomaž had had this epic up there and got rescued and is gone now. And we were like, oh, we had no idea like any of that was happening. And so we sent Scott Johnston's wife had come along for part of the expedition, and she went over there to like get the story and find out, because this expedition, the base camp hadn't packed up yet. And so she found out sort of what had happened and then came back and told us, but that was our only interaction. But quite frankly, all due respect to Tomáš, I thought that his choice of route was not very good. Like he was attempting a route that was very, very dangerous, very threatened from seracs. And so I was actually not worried about him at all, because he was doing something that I thought was actually attempting a route that I actually thought was obviously really dangerous. And I knew that the route that I was attempting had danger, but I was making it as safe as possible by sticking to the pillar. So a lot of thought went into this. You got to remember this, at this time for me, that was my whole life. Like this is all I spent. This was the beginning. I'd been a professional climber for maybe 2 years at this point. This is all I did. All I did was eat, sleep, train, and think about climbing.
Thank you. So another question that we got. So basically, how do you mentally prepare for solo climbs?
Yeah, I think, that's a big topic. I wrote about that quite a bit on my website, which is uphillathlete.com. You can look for mental training on that. I actually talk about what I learned. I have an article on there called What I Learned Climbing in Slovenia. And I think I also wrote about it in my book, Training for the New Alpinism, which is not available in Slovene language, but is available in English. And it's a difficult question to answer in a few short words, but I would say, the way we need to realize when we watch high performers in anything, if it's whether it's a high performing business person or a high performing athlete, you have to remember that that person is most likely focused solely on being really good at that one thing, probably to the exclusion of basically everything else in life, and that they are engaging in this process that all high achievers use, where they try something, and there's often failure associated with that, and they learn from it and they try again, and what they try is always a little different and hopefully always a little harder, and it's a very, very gradual process. And I think what the public, and I put myself in this, if I'm watching, say, an Olympic swimmer, I would be the public watching that. What it's easy to forget is all the years and all the work that went into getting to that point. We're only looking at the pinnacle. So I'm talking about this one climb that was one of the pinnacle weeks of my life, and I spent 20 years building up to that pinnacle. So it's 8 days out of 20 years that we're talking about. And so all of the preparations I did, while not completely structured or on purpose or self-determinative, they were very gradually over a long period of time that I increased my mental strength to be able to do something like climb K7 solo or climb the RuPaul face. And that's, you just get that by gradually, very gradually getting better and stronger in that capacity.
Thank you very much. And there's another question. How long does it take to regenerate after such climbs, and what kind of regeneration food do you use? Thank you.
For a climb like that, the damage is really severe. Physiologically, like if you ask a scientist, an exercise physiologist, they're probably going to say something like 2 to 4 months. But from my experience, Vince and I went back on another expedition in 2006, and as soon as we got up a little bit high, we could tell that we weren't the same climbers. We didn't have it, and that was a year later. I think it took a couple of years. I think we dug really, really deep. And as far as food, there was no special No special food.
Just probably lots of it.
Lots of it, yeah. There was definitely lots of it.
Okay,
And
so
good food, and carefully chosen and carefully prepared to be healthy and excellent food, but no secrets.
okay. So just to conclude, we would like to read you a few comments, also not questions, but just comments from the chat, just that you don't miss it, because I think they are really, really nice. So some people wrote, so this story is always enormously inspiring. Have read it in your books, have read it in your Zooms, always enjoy it a ton. Then somebody else wrote that you've inspired a generation of climbers and regular people. So thank you, Steve and Vince. A lot of people are saying thank you for a really great presentation. And you've actually inspired a lot of people to start climbing. You probably know that already. And a lot of people also wrote, thank you for sharing your story. And really, so hello from moje strana. And thank you for great... thank you for a great presentation and very inspiring. And thank you for taking us on your trip to Nanga Parbat.
Yeah.
And a lot of people actually wrote hvala Štef.
Yeah.
Just so that you know.
Yes, immer Štef.
So yeah, that name is still...
Vedno Štef, sorry. Govorim malo nemško in slovensko včasih zamešan in moja glavo. Hvala. Ja sem vedno Štef.
Okay, well, to conclude, thank you, Steve, so much for your time and for a really, really interesting presentation. And I really, really hope that we will meet in person as well. So you're welcome warmly in Slovenian Alpine Museum all the time. And
Thank you.
Hvala tudi vsem gledalcem, da ste bili danes z nami.
Vidimo in srečamo se zopet jutri in tudi v naslednjih dneh. Že jutri se nam bo pridružil član slovenske mladinske alpinistične reprezentance, to je Matija Volontar, ki nam bo predstavil svoj pogled na alpinizem. Seveda pa nadaljujemo tudi v soboto, ko bodo z nami člani odprave Kanada 2019, iz alpinističnega odseka Rašica prihajajo, popeljali pa nas bodo v granitne stene Severne Amerike. In seveda potem nas čaka še zadnji dan Sfinga in Gregor Kresal, s katerim boste lahko tudi spregovorili nekaj besed, obenem pa uživali v tem kultnem filmu, ki prikazuje prvi prosto preplezani vzpon preko obraza Sfinge iz leta 1995. Tako da z vami sva bila Eva Šmit in Matjaž Podlipnik. Se vidimo jutri ob istem času na istem mestu. Lep večer vsem skupaj. Hvala.
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 Hvala, Štef.
Ni zakaj. Se vidimo.
Se vidimo.